deep in the heart of the Australian bush, far below the canopy and moonlit sky. In the safety of darkness, hidden from predators, there are those who roam the night. Concealed from view, the frogs at the Wadigan Mountains emerge. Below the grass and on the forest floor, a juvenile Littlejohn's tree frog in search of a meal. But why walk when food can come to you? It can be a long waiting game. Their large eyes allow excellent night vision, sensitive to the slightest movement. He waits. Then with his powerful legs, he propels himself at his prey. Every few days, this juvenile must feed to develop into a fully grown male. In the grass at the water's edge, another young male is on a mission to set up his own territory. Jumping and climbing through the leaves, he takes his time being selective in his search. But there's competition. In the form of an older, larger male. So his search continues, for that would be a fight he would not win. But at the pond, a rival male isn't their biggest threat. For in these waters, invisible to all, hides a deadly disease. The frogs are at serious risk from the very water that sustains their lives.
Chytrid fungus kills the frogs. It changes the balance of the solutes in the frog's blood and fluids in its body, which leads to a heart attack, essentially. Any frog that comes to the pond or the stream where there's a chytrid infection can become infected on their skin.
This life-threatening fungus has caused the decline of over 500 species of amphibian worldwide, with 90 known species going extinct. Their life here at this pond is at risk. Further south, in the Blue Mountains, there is another fatal threat for the Littlejohn's tree frog. The landscape has been transformed by raging bushfires, leaving behind vast areas of burnt forest.
Well, the forest fires affected Littlejohn's frog significantly. So they just burnt large tracts of forest right to the ground. The fires were severe and intense, and that simply destroyed the trees and the shrubs where the frogs live next to the stream. And they burnt with high temperatures, above 800 degrees centigrade. 80% of the population had been decimated, and the frogs were only in half of the sites where we used to know them.
Flames consumed approximately 5 million hectares within a year. This fragile ecosystem was destroyed. Frogs perished as their habitats burnt, and evaporated ponds left remaining tadpoles to suffocate and die. Throughout Australia, the return of the La Niña rain fills the ponds and brings life back to the bush. A male starts to call. Shortly after, more join, creating a loud chorus to vie for a female's attention. A female hears this ensemble of calls and sets off towards the loudest voice, for this is likely to be the strongest male. But for the Littlejohn's tree frog, the loudest voice is not always the best.
Because Littlejohn's frog is in small populations, some of those populations are down to less than 50 or 100 adult frogs. Once populations get so small, there's a lot of inbreeding. Inbreeding leads to a loss of genetic diversity and abnormality. So the frog's on a slippery slope once its population becomes very small.
Unaware, the female continues to lay her eggs on overhanging vegetation, allowing the male to fertilise them. The health and success of these eggs will remain unknown. Researchers at the University of Newcastle are now seeking the help of citizen scientists in an attempt to save this endangered species. In order to do this, they set up acoustic data loggers to record calling males to locate the remaining colonies. At inhabited ponds, scientists are collecting eggs and tadpoles to head start the individuals.
Head starting is a process of reducing the environmental pressures on the very young stage of Littlejohn's tree frog. We will raise them from eggs to tadpoles in captivity, and when they're juveniles, we will release them back into the wild, hopefully having a higher rate of survival.
As the sun sets, the scientists are in the field on the search for males and females to establish a captive breeding colony.
The process of captive breeding for Littlejohn's tree frog is to take a male from one area and a female from another one and put them together to create eggs. We hope our captive breeding program will not only establish an insurance colony of Latoria littlejohni, but actually allow us to increase the genetic diversity of populations across New South Wales.
These released juveniles have a better chance of survival to adulthood and will ensure the genetic diversity for generations to come. Back in the lab, Dr. Rose Upton is tasked with securing the future for the Littlejohn's tree frog.
What we've seen with Littlejohn's tree frog is quite a rapid decline, And with things like bushfires getting worse and worse every year, it's really important for us to consider collecting sperm for a biobank well before disaster strikes. When we cryopreserve sperm cells from amphibians, we need to start with the collection of the sperm. For amphibians, this involves a hormone injection to the frog so that it releases sperm in urine. Once we have that sperm, we can go through the process of cryopreserving it, which involves adding a cryoprotectant, which is a solution we use to protect the cell at cold temperatures. Once we've added the cryoprotectant to the sperm cells, we can actually freeze it, and this can be done in a lab with a controlled rate freezer. What this does is bring the cell down to minus 80 degrees Celsius, at which point we can plunge it into liquid nitrogen. Once the sperm cells are in that state, they theoretically can be held like that indefinitely. The hopes for the future are that if this frog species were to go extinct, that we could use that sperm as an insurance policy to bring that species back. And hopefully it can help the species conservation before it gets to the point of extinction.
Only time will tell the future of this species. But despite the many threats, and with a bit of help, the Littlejohn's tree frog has every fighting chance.